Wow on all of it, wherever you want to start.
Well, first, the resolution from the RNC on Kinzinger and Cheney is an extraordinary document from start to finish, Nicole. At the very beginning, it starts with a preamble that says, whereas the primary mission of the Republican Party is to elect Republicans who support the United States Constitution. So that's their starting point. And then they end by saying it is Kinzinger and Cheney who should be censured because their behavior, which has been destructive to the institution of the U.S. House of Representatives, the Republican Party, and our republic. So their behavior, by helping to take the lead to investigate an attack on the United States Congress, makes them destructive to the institution of the U.S. House of Representatives. I mean, it's an extraordinary document, and the juxtaposition with Mike Pence coming out and for the first time uttering the words, at least the first time I've ever heard, uttering the words, Donald Trump is wrong. Just finally coming out and saying it. Donald Trump is wrong, from the loyal vice president, the most loyal person to Donald Trump in that entire administration until the day of January 6th. It's an extraordinary moment in all of this. And Nicole, as you know, when I interviewed Donald Trump just 2 months after he left the White House, and he said to me, when I asked him, you know, if he was concerned about Mike Pence, and what about those that were chanting on January 6th, hang Mike Pence? And he said to me, the exact quote, I said, they're chanting hang Mike Pence, and his next words are, it's common sense, John. Now, that interview was last year, was in my book, was out months ago, and we haven't heard any condemnation of any significance from anybody in the leadership of the Republican Party to those words from Donald Trump, and yet we have this condemnation here of Kinzinger and Cheney today. Extraordinary.
John, I mean, just take me inside what your reporting suggests is sort of torquing up the volume out of Trump world. I mean, I know that the members have been identified that are of interest to Liz Cheney. I think Liz Cheney seems to have known exactly who was talking to Donald Trump that day. Jim Jordan and Kevin McCarthy has a phone call Liz Cheney's been interested in since before the 1-6 committee was formed. You've also got the specter of very senior advisors to the vice president. We don't know what they said, but we know they were in the room, and there's no suggestion from anyone on that committee. I talked to one of them yesterday, and I'm sure you have as well, that they have been stonewalling. So is this sort of where the rubber was going to meet the road for Pence?
Yeah, and you know, so you have seen Mark Short, who was his chief of staff, Pence's chief of staff, testify, and also Greg Jacob, who was his counselor in the vice president's office. So really his two most important advisors as vice president come forward, and by all accounts, cooperating. We're told they're not talking about conversations that either one of them had directly with Donald Trump. That would fall under executive privilege, or arguably would fall under executive privilege, but no indication that they're holding back on anything else. I think that one big question hanging over all of this is, does Pence himself end up cooperating with this committee? I actually doubt it. I don't think it's going to come to the point where we actually see Pence himself testifying. And maybe after you've seen the words that he said today, maybe they don't need his testimony. I mean, it's clear what his position is, and it's clear the pressure that he was under by Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I think that idea that at some point all the questions have been answered, either from a podium stage or from the testimony of the 475 witnesses, is something that'll perhaps be clearer at the time when it's known what Pence will do. Steve, I want to bring you in. I can see the dogs in the background, if they'll let us borrow you for a couple minutes. I want to bring you in on this. It's not a split screen. It's one screen. It's the Republican Party. And it's what John's saying. The language of the censure of Cheney and Kinzinger is so noteworthy. It's where we started today because, again, it's all in writing. We are the party of the insurrection. We are the party of the lie about the insurrection. And it's not a lie being told by the left. It's not a lie being told by the media. Ted Cruz called it a domestic terror attack. So to talk about the rewriting of history.
Well, it's this is a moment of another moment, I should say, of revelation of the Republican Party as an institution through its elected leaders, revealing what it's become. And what it has become is an autocratic vehicle to advance an autocratic agenda that is controlled by Donald Trump in this country. And there's a couple of remarkable aspects to it. First off, is it fair to call this Stalin-esque in its rhetoric? Certainly it is. Is it gaslighting on an epic scale? Surely it is. Is it a denunciation of the truth? Definitely. Is it aimed to be a warning that disobedience, that dissent in this movement, this project for the purposes of taking political power in America, including at the cost of ending the American experiment? There is to be no disobedience within that movement, and that's a message and a warning to any other dissenters out there. And so what we see is a blossoming of this movement, the revealing of it in full. They keep telling us who they are, and this is all part of a moving, ongoing event. This is very deeply linked to Newt Gingrich coming out and saying that political opponents should be locked up. And I just would say this academically, what's the further journey from the end of the Obama administration until that moment where you start talking about locking up political opponents, or from locking up political opponents to an executioner's wall? What's the further journey? And so when we look at all of this in its totality, it's staring us in the face. We have an autocratic movement that is headed by a former president of the United States that has completely consumed one of the two political parties, that has abandoned any pretext of fidelity to the American experiment that both political parties are supposed to be in the business of perpetuating in the work of making the Union stronger, fairer, better for our progeny. So truly an appalling moment in American life and the life of the modern Republican Party, but again, another reveal, including the reference to the Democrat Party, which of course is the Democratic Party in the United States of America.
Annie, a couple of Republicans, elected Republicans, defending Cheney and Kinzinger today. There's a tweet out from Senator Bill Cassidy, who of course voted to convict Donald Trump. There's another tweet from Mitt Romney, but no one has rushed to the microphones to say anything close to what Steve Schmidt just said. We wanted to sort of come up with maybe an alternate theory of why they're so mad at Liz Cheney. Here's some of her most stinging rebukes of Donald Trump.
What we already know does constitute the gravest violation of his oath of office by any president in the history of the country. A former president who provoked a violent attack on this Capitol in an effort to steal the election has resumed his aggressive effort to convince Americans that the election was stolen from him. This is a man who has demonstrated that he is at war with the rule of law. He's demonstrated that he's willing to blow through every guardrail of democracy. Any man who would watch television as police officers were being beaten, as his supporters were invading the Capitol of the United States, is clearly unfit for future office, clearly can never be anywhere near the Oval Office.
So any man who would watch television as police officers are being beaten, there's only one man that we know of through great journalism and everything we've understood. And that is what is being described by the most senior official at the RNC, Ronna McDaniel, this way. Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger crossed a line. They chose to join Nancy Pelosi in a Democrat-led persecution of ordinary citizens who engaged in legitimate political discourse that had nothing to do with violence at the Capitol. That is why Republican National Committee members and myself overwhelmingly support this resolution. What is the sort of doublespeak about? I mean, they're mad that Liz Cheney is telling the truth about Donald Trump, and the problem they have is that the truth happened on live TV.
Right. I mean, the thing here is, from a political standpoint, No one in the Republican Party would want to be doing this or making this statement. You can see Kevin McCarthy has tried as much as possible to keep his members not being the headline, not what we're talking about here on television. They want to keep the focus on the Democrats, on inflation, on the economy. Senate leadership has tried to make it about Biden. But this statement is just the proof that this party is, this is written for the old audience of one. This is written for Donald Trump. This is written because all those clips you just played, he's very angry at Liz Cheney because she was said in no uncertain terms that he was what he did, what his role was, and that he's not fit to serve in office. And this is not politically helpful to any Republicans I've spoken to. And Ronna McDaniel herself is doing this for the old audience of one. That's the only person it helps. And this is just proof that the party is his, as much as McConnell and other Republicans might want to be forward looking and ignore him and pretend he's not there because he's not on Twitter and he's not in the Oval Office. He's very much there.